G'day and welcome to the Patently Strategic Podcast, where we discuss all things at the intersection of business, technology, and patents. This podcast is a monthly discussion amongst experts in the field of patenting. It is for inventors, founders, and IP professionals alike, established or aspiring. And in this month's episode, we're continuing our Inventor Stories series, courtesy of a wonderful sit-down we recently had with Robert Cameron. We've seen few entrepreneurial success stories that haven't involved heavy doses of perseverance, grit, observation, and creative problem solving. Today's guest possesses these qualities in spades. And while I can't necessarily recommend some of the death-defying specifics of his approach, at least not with a lot of don't try this at home fine print, I do think that most inventors and aspiring entrepreneurs will benefit immensely from studying Robert's thoughtfully crafted and time-tested framework. Robert Cameron is the owner and CEO of Multi Wedge, as well as the inventor of some brilliant products sold under the same name. Multi Wedge non-prying tools are designed to pry delicate materials without damage. These are excellent tools for woodworking, electrical wiring, delicate material work, and so much more. Robert's wedges were recently tested by SpaceEx and used in the manufacturing process of jet engines at G.E Aviation. And of slightly less significance, but much closer to home, found under the Christmas trees of several of my closest relatives this past December. Robert has molded 1.3 million three-piece sets, 3.3 million single wedges, and has been selling multi-wedge in over 18,000 stores since 2010. As you'll no doubt notice in a minute from his wonderful accent, Robert is a New Zealand native, and he's also a bit of a thrill seeker, having once taken his jet ski all the way from Miami to Bimini Island in the Bahamas. I met Robert back in October at the U.S. Inventor Conference in D.C. I was lucky enough to bump into him over dinner when he shared his incredible story with me. One of the funniest and most inspiring stories you'll hear, so we had to have him on. If you're a fan of Masters of Scale type founder stories, you're going to love this one. Now, before jumping in with Robert, we'd like to take you to the next installment of the Mossoff Minute, a monthly segment that builds on our Patent Wars episode and features short conversations with Professor Adam Mossoff, providing updates and quick takes on movements in patent reform, significant court rulings, innovation policy happenings, and occasional Star Wars references. In this month's Minute, Adam discusses findings from the recently published World IP Day Patent Litigation Study. This study clearly shows problems with the patent system, but not the problems you typically hear from the companies that have been dominating the patent policy discussions for the past decade. Adam also highlights the importance of injunctions and damages, something we'll be discussing a lot more in segments to come.
This past World IP Day, April 26th, a very important new patent litigation study was released. It is important because there have not been any systemic studies of patent litigation for a very long time. So this study brings a much needed data to the continuing policy discussions that are occurring in Washington, D.C., especially on the Hill, with respect to the need to reform the U.S. patent system and restoring reliable and effective patent rights. This study does show that there are problems in patent litigation, but not the problems that you typically hear from many of the companies that have been dominating the patent policy discussions for the past decade or so. Patent litigation is, in fact, way down. Consistent with that, also, the remedies that patent owners receive when their property rights are violated are also way down. Patent owners can have historically and typically received what's called an injunction. It's an order to stop someone from violating or infringing your property rights. For instance, if someone's trespassing in your home, you can get an injunction against them to kick them out of your home. Patent owners can get the same thing against companies that are violating their patent rights by making and selling their inventions without their permission and without paying them a royalty fee. Also, the damages for these infringing actions are also way down. So patent owners are both not receiving those vital court orders to stop people from violating their rights going forward, and they're not receiving the appropriate compensation for the past infringement and violation of their rights. Moreover, the litigation by so-called patent trolls, those mythical beasts that allegedly buy up junk patents and threaten real innovators, is not occurring, and to the extent that there are a few bad actors, that is actually a very small, insignificant portion of the entire patent litigation landscape. What this shows us is that there is continuing concerns about the destabilization of patents as reliable and effective property rights that serve as a basis for commercialization and deployment of new technologies, new drugs, and the other types of products and services that make modern life a veritable miracle today. This data will serve a key role in the continuing discussions about how we should reform the patent system that are now occurring in Congress and elsewhere. So stay tuned for more.
Thanks, Adam. We're also publishing clips from the Mossoff Minute as short-form videos on Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and TikTok. You can check out these shorts and follow us at Aurora Patents on all 3 platforms. And now, without further ado, here's our interview with Robert Cameron. Welcome, Robert, and thanks for carving some time out to chat with us today.
Great, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
I love starting at the beginning. What's your origin story as an entrepreneur, and what got you down the path of non-marring prying tools?
Sure. So I was obviously born in New Zealand. I did a 8,000-hour apprenticeship as a tool and die maker. When I was 22, I decided to go to Australia, and so I spent 10 years in Australia, working in the gold mines, working at Aborigine communities, doing mechanical work. I used to travel all over Australia, just doing shutdown work for mining. I've been to the US 3 different times, and I really loved it, and the sort of entrepreneurial spirit of the US. So in 1994, I decided to immigrate and see if I could invent something.
That's great. So specifically, what started getting you focused on the prying tools?
Right. So I worked for a oil tool company in 1997, and previously to that, I was doing some construction work, and I always was leveling stuff, and I was using wooden shims and different sort of tools, pry tools, to try and align and level stuff. And I always thought there'd be a good idea to have a wedge, and then have a handle on it. So I made a prototype. I've got a couple here. I made these out of wood, and made them at a friend's shop. And I just got the angle right. Like I said, I put a handle on the end of it. And then that was the sort of concept for it. And then when I was working for this oil tool company, I saw some workers prying some valves, these precision valves, and I thought these would make a good pry tool if I made them out of a harder material. So what I did is I made the orange set out of polypropylene, and I made another set out of a really hard polycarbonate material, mainly for prying purposes. So when I was at my job, I met a gentleman at an inventors forum in California. They had a machine shop up in LA. So I showed him the product, and he said, well, if you give me $3,000, you can come up and make the product yourself. So I was like really excited. So actually I spent 2.5 years at this company, and they always knew me as the inventor guy. So I came in one day and I said, I'm going to go ahead and make my wedges. So I literally backed my truck up, put my toolbox on it, and I said, I'll see you guys later. So they were in absolute shock, and I used to joke around at work all the time, and they seriously thought I was joking. And I left, and I never saw any of them again, except for about probably 10 years later. One of the guys I was really close to, this guy Tony, he'd moved to Colorado, and he just got my number off the product, and he called me up, and I hadn't seen him for 10 or 15 years, whatever it was. And he's like, hey, Kiwi, what are you doing? He's like, I couldn't believe it. I was in O'Reilly's Auto Parts and I saw your wedges. He was absolutely blown away. You know, he hadn't heard of seeing me since I got in my truck and just drove off. So that was a pretty funny story. He couldn't believe it. He was like, 15 years ago, I saw you put your toolbox in the back of your truck and I never heard from you. He was like, I was always wondering what had happened. So that was pretty funny.
What a great full circle moment too. You know, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, number one, I mean, you did the thing that so many people sort of dream of doing quietly. toiling away, with the cubes and benches and things. Just, if I'm gonna bust out of here someday. I'm gonna bust out of here someday. And you did it. You did it. And that was pretty cool to see that colleague come back around.
Yeah. Yep. So then, so I went up to LA, and the guy's shop, he was a pretty successful inventor as well. He invented the Chihuahua car wash mop. I don't know if anyone in the audience remember that back in the mid 90s. I think it was 1995. It was like a blue circle with little feathers made out of car wash material, the blue stuff that washes your car. And he had been really successful with it. And he had licensed it to one of these direct TV companies. So I was under the impression that he had this big, massive, beautiful workshop and all this stuff. And I was like really excited. I met him, like I said, I met him at the Inventors Forum. So he's like, come on up, kiddo, come up to the shop. And, so I went up there on a Saturday, and I was driving along, and the area started not looking too great. And when I sort of pulled in there, I thought I'd come to the wrong address because it was in not a pleasant part of LA. It was really a bad part. And so I was standing outside. I was sitting in my truck outside, and I had my little prototype sitting on the seat beside me, and there was a chain link, gate. It was all closed off. You couldn't see. Had a big padlock on it. And I was sitting there. I was looking at his business card, and I kept looking. I'm like, am I at the right address? I had to take a double take. I thought this guy had like a lot of money, So I almost turned around and left. And I was sitting there contemplating, should I knock on the gate? This can't be right. So anyway, I was going to leave, and I thought, you know what? I drove all this way up to, I was in Artesia. I might as well just knock on the gate. So I knocked on the gate, and all these big bulldogs were like barking and trying to attack me. And then nothing happened, and I was like, well, I guess I'll leave. And then the door opens, there's a trailer on the lot, and this door opened, and this guy comes out, and his hair's all strapped. He's like, who the hell's that? He's like yelling out there. And I said, oh, it's Robert Cameron from the Inventors Forum. And he goes, who's that? And I go, Robert Cameron, remember? And he's like, oh, yeah. So he goes, hang on a minute. So he opens the gate, lets me in, and it was an old body shop that he had. And he had, so we walked inside, and he had all the machine tools. He had like a Bridgeport milling machine, a EDM thinker machine, lathe. He had all the right equipment. And so we got talking about the product, and he said, oh, you know what? He goes, yeah, I like that product. He said, I tell you what, you give me $3,000 and you can use all the machine and build the mold yourself. And I thought that was pretty neat. I thought it was pretty, and he was a super nice guy. He had this kind of like following of people. We used to follow him around, and he was like an old biker guy, super nice. And so that's what I did. So a couple of days later, I went up there in my truck, and we went down to an aluminum place, and I bought these big blocks of aluminum, just a blank chunk of aluminum, and went back into the shop there and just literally got I've still got them somewhere, like a manila folder and a ruler. And Bob actually designed the mold because he's a mold maker. I'd done some mold making in my apprenticeship, but not actual plastic injection molds. So he designed the mold, and I went ahead and basically built it. It took about 9 months. It wasn't like today you would have a CNC machines and it'll be programmed and it'll be done in like 2 days. This was the old mechanical Bridgeport lathe, and it was quite a work environment. He was a bit of a pack rat, and the workshop was just a complete chaos. It was about that deep and junk over everywhere. I mean, there was stuff falling off. If you wanted to get a drill bit, it would take you about half an hour to find it. Super nice guy, like I said, but just a chaotic work environment. And he had all kinds of animals, like he had dogs, chickens, cat. He had a pig. Big pig used to lie in there, and you have to stand over it. I mean, it was just was absolutely chaotic. But I didn't have any money at the time. I had a couple $1,000 in the bank. I had basically no income at all. And so, I'd end up buying an old Chevy Lumina with blown head gaskets, and I bought that. I had it towed there, and when I had some spare time, I was like working on it, changing the head gaskets on it, and made $300 or $400 on it. And that was a lot of money back then, just working on it. And just to say about the area, Bob had some people that stayed with him, and they all went out to dinner one night, and I was only there about a week or so. And like I said, it was a pretty scary area, and I was kind of hungry, so I wanted to order a pizza. So I got on the phone there, and I think just when cell phones came out, I got on the phone and I dialed the pizza place, and the guy's like, "Oh, what would you like?" And I said, "Can I get like a Hawaiian pizza, pineapple, pepperoni, ham, everything." I was really hungry. And he goes, "Okay, it'll be about 10, 15 minutes. What's your address?" So I said, I gave him the address, 168th Street, Artesian. The phone just went dead. I was like, what the hell? So I called back. I thought, he must have disconnected by mistake. And he didn't take the call. And then when Bob came back, I said, what the hell's going on? I said, I ordered a pizza and the guy wouldn't even talk to me. He goes, they don't deliver anything around here. It was he said it was such a bad area that the cops don't even show up. I kid you not, there were every night there were helicopters flying around, and the gunshots going off. And actually one night I was walking from the shop over to the trailer, and these gang guys were shooting bullets off, and one ricocheted. It went over the top of my head, and it actually parted my hair. And I'll never forget it. It went that bullet sound. I could actually feel my hair move.
Oh my gosh!
I just jumped down on the ground and commando crawled across to the trailer, and I was thinking, wow, this inventing products is just not as easy as I thought.
Didn't know it was going to be quite so hazardous to your health. The price of innovation.
Yeah. So so after that, so it took about I think about 9 or 10 months to build the mold, from scratch. So the first idea I had was so when I ran the mold and I got the parts out, and I thought of I was a mechanical guy. I had New Zealand. I used to have rally sprint cars, and I always worked on motorbikes forever. And I thought the first sort of idea I thought for the pry tools was for splitting motorcycle cases. So I had this thing stuck in my head that motorcycle cases, being able to have really thin tips, you'd be able to get in the really tight gap, in the engine casing.
Yeah.
I thought that would just be, that was I really got a passion for that idea, So I actually made this. I brought this along. This is the first packaging I ever did, and it was done on an early version of Publisher, probably.
Oh sure, yeah.
2000 or something.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I just did it myself, and I had it shrink wrap. A friend of Bob's at the shop had a packaging machine, so I went and actually stuck it on there and shrink wrap it. So this is my very first one. I actually called it Tough Wedge. That was the first name I thought of. So anyway, so my great idea was in my head, I thought, wow, if I could get in every motorcycle dealership in the world, it would be just amazing, So I thought this has got to be a great use for it. So that's what I focused on. So I had a friend that had a motorcycle dealership. I think it was in San Clemente, San Juan Capistrano, I think Mission Yamaha. So I drove down there. So I got my wedges after 9 months, put them in my truck, a whole box of these, and I went down to the dealership, this guy John, and I said, hey, I've got, he'd heard about me, and I said, hey, can you test these out with your mechanics? And for splitting the cases and stuff, it's not going to damage the thin casings and stuff. And he's like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Just leave them there. So I left the box there, and I went back, and I went back about 2 weeks later. So I was telling Bob, he's like, we're all excited, that I was all excited to go back and see what the feedback was. And so I went back, and I walked in the shop, and here's this box sitting on the counter. And I thought, wow, I wonder how he knew that I was like coming,
So nice of him to package it up like that.
Yeah, I was like, I kind of looked like, I kind of thought, I wonder how he knew I was coming. Anyway, so I talked to him. I said, hey, so how'd you like the wedges? My heart was beating. I was like, I spent 9 or 10 months, like basically no income. And I was standing there, I'm like, he's going to love them. I'm sure he will. And he looked at me and he said, oh, we never use them. We actually have case pullers that we use to separate them. We don't need them. So I was absolutely, devastated. I was like, we didn't. So I put them in my truck. I'm not quite sure if I actually cried, but I was just devastated.
Would have been understandable.
Yeah. So I went back up to the shop, and I told Bob, and I said, hey, they didn't use them. And he's like, what? And I said, no, they have these case pullers. So, I was just devastated. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what am I going to do now? So Bob's like, well, you got a good job, working for Varco. So I really didn't want to go back. So I left it for a couple of days, and I went back up to the shop, and I was there. It was like probably around midnight, and I was just like looking at them, and I was thinking, oh, that's so such a disaster. And then I look over, and one of the this girl that lived there was
in the machine shop.
Yeah. So there were a few people that lived in there, and she was one of them that lived in there. Anyway, she had this handbag, and I'm kind of looking over the shelf, and I'm looking. And I said, "Hey, Kathy, what are you doing?" And she's like, she opens the handbag up, and she pulls out some of my wedges, and I'm looking at them, and I said, "What are you doing with them?" And then I looked down, and she had a picture frame, and she had the orange wedges, and she's like prying the picture frame away from the glass. And she goes, "Kiwi, these are great. These are really great for look. I can pry this picture out without damaging the frame and stuff. These are really good." And I looked at it and I went, "What?" And I just thought that is brilliant. What a great idea. So I went over right away. Went back over to the trailer, and I said, "Hey, Bob, Kathy was using these as a like a pry tool for this wooden frame and stuff." I said, "What about woodworkers?" And he goes, "Oh, that's a great idea, isn't it?" Yeah, he goes, "I've got a friend that's got a wood shop down off Pioneer, off this boulevard." And so we went and dropped some. The next day, we went and dropped a box of them off at the woodworkers. And we went back about a week or so later, and the guy absolutely loved them. Thought they were really awesome. So they'd have like really fine finished woodworking. They'd have trims, and sometimes they glue a trim on, and they want to move it and they can't because there's really no way to get in this tiny little gap. So these wedges, they just slide them in there and just give them a nice little gentle tap, and they could lift the frame off and reposition it.
Mm-hmm.
So they absolutely loved them. So that gave me some inspiration, and I thought, what a great idea! That could be a great market, as actual for prying,
Absolutely.
woodworking and stuff. So I think a few weeks later, we went to the LA County Fair, and there was a company there called Lee Valley Tools from Canada. And I went up to the guy, and I just had them in my pocket, and I said, "Hey, would you guys want to sell these for woodworkers?" And the guy was super nice, and he goes, "Yeah, why not? We'll try it." So about a week or so later, we went backwards and forwards, and I ended up selling about 8,000 of them in their catalog. So that was I was blown away. I was like, wow.
Well, that's amazing exposure, right? Because anybody who's doing woodworking has that Lee Valley Tools catalog, sitting in their shop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was kind of a turning point. It was really, really exciting. I couldn't believe it. And some of my friends used to mess with me, and they'd call up with this fake voice and pretend they were ordering. They're like, "Hey, Mr. Cameron, we'd like to order 50,000 sets of wedges." And I'd always go, "Yeah, funny." Anyway, one day this I think it was Lee Valley Tools called up again to reorder, and I thought it was a friend of mine messing with me. And the lady goes, "I would like to order 8,000," and I said, "Well, you can't have them, sorry." And she goes, "What?" She goes, "This is a multi wedge." I go, "Yeah." She goes, "I want to order 8,000 of your wedges. We've been selling them." I said, "Well, you can't have any." And after a few minutes, I was like, "Oh my goodness! Oh, I think it's actually real." And then I had to explain to her what the story was, and she just thought it was hilarious. So yeah,
Oh, good thing she hung on that phone call, right?
yeah,
Didn't give
absolutely.
didn't give up on you. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. So then, I think the first trade show I went to was in Chicago at the National Hardware Show in 2004. Um, so I did a big booth. I'm not a big booth, just average booth there. So that was my first real trade show. And I got some really good accounts out of that. I got like McMaster Car was an industrial distributor,
Okay.
and I've been selling continuously since 2004 with that one contact. So that was amazing. I'm actually doing orders today for it. But that's been consistent sales since 2004. Just you know every few months or whatever for the whole
Hey,
time.
you can't ask for more than that.
Yeah,
Consistent revenue stream like that. It's what it's all about.
yeah. So yeah, that was these. I've got some really good accounts that I've had for some 14, 15 years or longer.
Sure.
So yeah, just being diligent and persistent. You go through quite a few sellers that don't do very well with it for whatever reasons, and then all of a sudden you get a really good account, and they just go on and on forever. And that's really good. Um, when I first got into McMaster-Carr, I was well, I think orders came by fax machine
Sure.
uh, back in the day. And I remember I was still working on, I couldn't make a living back then. I wasn't making enough to make a living. So, any orders were just like really, really exciting. And so I remember one time I used to have the fax machine in my room, and I think McMaster-Carr would order at night time because, the phone was cheaper or something. So, so I'd be lying in bed and I'd hear the fax machine go off and go like this, and I was like totally broke. And I'd hear this thing at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd just like jump out of bed, like turn the light on, I couldn't see, and I'd look at the fax, and it would be an order from McMaster-Carr, and I was just so excited. And then I couldn't sleep because I was like, wow, $500, that was a lot of money back then, a lot of
Sure.
money. And so I'd be so excited I couldn't sleep. And then so after a while I'd get orders, maybe one a week or so. And then sometimes, I'd go to sleep and I'd hear the fax machine and I'd jump out of bed, turn the light on and go over there, and there wasn't a fax there. Like I'd actually just kind of dreamt it. So then I wouldn't get,
Trying to make it happen.
yeah. So I wouldn't sleep even when I didn't get an order. So
So, we talk a fair amount about, self bootstrapping. You had a little bit of a side hustle to keep the bills going, right?
yeah. Yeah, so I had this friend that actually used to come and hang out at the shop. This guy Steve, and he was he was like a recovering alcoholic guy, and super nice guy. We used to hang out, and uh, when I kind of left the shop after I built a couple of other molds, other ideas, and I moved back, I was back in Costa Mesa, and I was doing my online catalogs, and I still wasn't making enough. And I had a friend that I was doing construction for, and I really didn't like it at all. And anyway, about 6 months later or so, this guy Steve rolls up down my driveway, and he's like, "Hey, Kiwi, what are you doing? What are you doing?" Anyway, he's dressed up in a plumbing outfit, full on like master technician, the nice blue white shirt, and had like Steve on this thing. And I look at him, I go, "Steve, like he was actually staying at a rehab place that was about a block away, and he'd remember my number and stuff. That's how he came over." And I said, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Dude, I'm making all kinds of money being a plumber." And I said, "Well, you don't know anything about plumbing. How the hell could you get a job?" And he goes, "This place is amazing. You don't have to know anything." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Dude, you should come up. You could get a job. Screw working for your friend. Making $300. You could be making like $2,000-3,000 a week." And I thought he was kidding. So he actually brings out these invoices, and sure enough, he was making an incredible amount of money. And I was like, "Well, I don't want to do plumbing, And he's like, anyway, so he left, and he came back again, and He's like, "Kiwi, come on, just come up to the office. It's up in Burbank. Just come up and just see the boys up there. They're really really cool guys, And I was like sort of humming and hawing. I was like, "Oh, yeah, all right. Oh, let's go." So we drove all out to Burbank, and went up to like 12th floor of this building. And he opens the door, and we walk in, and this place looked like a NASA control center. It had boards up with projectors with all the plumbers, the top sellers, had all these dispatchers, on the phones. It was just like chaotic. It was just full on. This was back just when that big housing boom was starting.
Okay.
And so I still had no intention of being a plumber. I didn't know anything about plumbing. So anyway, I go and sit down at this desk, and anyway, his boss comes over, and his boss comes up and meets me, and, "Hey, Robert, nice to meet you." And he goes, "Steve, give him the form." And I'm like, "Give me the form? What the hell is he talking about?" So anyway, he gave me this. He's like, "Kiwi, fill this out. So it's like a 40-question test, multi guest test. So he's like, "Fill it out." I said, "I'm not going to fill it out." He's like, Come on." So I'm like, "All right." So I just go through, and I go through like the 40 questions, like 3 pages. And then a few minutes later, his boss comes out, and he goes, "Come on, Robert, come to the office. Bring that paper." And I'm like, "Oh, he freaking lined me up for an interview." Like, I couldn't believe it. So I go in there, and he sits down, and he goes, "Hang on, let me see what plumbing experience you had." And I said, "Well, I helped my friend install a bathtub once, on a construction site." He's like, "Oh, okay." So he goes through, and he marks all the questions. And he goes, "Well, you got 39 out of 40 wrong. How about you start on Monday?" I was like, "What did he just say?" So I actually got 39 out of 40 wrong. And he said, "Come in on Monday, and we'll get you a van and a uniform and get you started."
You got a van. That's great.
So I mean, at this stage, I was still barely paying my bills. So I was like, "Oh, I really didn't want to do it." So anyway, I drive all the way back up. Well, Steve drops me off on Monday. I go into the office. They give me this like brand new white plumbing shirt with like American flag, master plumber, like all these badge, like certificates and stuff. I had absolutely no clue what they were. So had really really nice like dark blue pants. I had to get brand new shoes, work shoes. So really looked the part. So then I got this van, and this was like a beat up van. On the outside of the van, it had fully stocked with parts. So I opened up the back doors. It is absolutely completely empty, but one big brass fitting about that big in the back. There were no shelves. There was nothing, absolutely nothing in there. So I'm driving back to Costa Mesa, and I'm driving down the freeway like this, just trying to keep it straight. And every time I'd hit the brakes, this big brass fitting would go boom, 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 bang on the back, and then I'd get a fright and almost run off the road. So I got back in those days we had the little pages.
Mm-hmm.
We had the big Thomas guide. It was like that thick with all these pages in it. And so I got back to my house and I'm just like sitting there, I'm like freaking out. I'm like, if this pager goes off, I'm just going to be terrified. I'm going to be on like emergency plumbing calls. I mean, I actually had a business card made and I'd written Bob the plumber on it. And about 2 years later, someone said, "Hey Bob, how do you spell plumber?" I said, "Why is that?" So apparently I'd spelled it Plummer. I've been handing these cards out for like 2 years and no one said anything for that one time. And I looked and I thought, I always thought I looked a bit strange. So,
well, if they weren't impressed by the van, the business card was definitely going to seal the deal.
Yeah, for sure. So, I always remember my first call. So I ended up doing the plumbing for 4 years. Believe it or not, it was like the funnest job I
That's
ever had.
unreal.
But no, I'll tell you about my first call. It was real quick. So I got a call. Actually, it wasn't far from where the motorcycle dealer was, down in San Clemente. So anyway, I'm dressed up. I got this van. I'm dressed up, plumbing shirt, nice pants, nice shoes. So I knock on the door, and it's this Asian lady, and she's like, "Oh, hello, Robert. Nice to meet you. Come on in, come on in." So I go in, and I'm just like kind of trembling, I'm like thinking, "Oh my God, what's wrong with it?" Plumbing, like. Anyway, she says to me, she goes, "Oh, so how long have you been a plumber?" And I look at my watch and I go, "About 30 seconds." And she goes, "Oh, you're so funny."
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, no, I'm not kidding. So then, to elaborate on that story. So anyway, she had this toilet and the tank was running, the fill valve wasn't working. So, I mean, I had a pretty good mechanical background, but so far as plumbing, I'd never
Right,
done
yeah.
anything. So I opened the top of the tank and I see it's kept running. It wouldn't shut off. So I said to her, "Well, I think it's this." I didn't know what it was. It's this valve here. I'll go see if I got one in my van for you. So I go out in the street. I open the van. I open the doors, and she's kind of like standing by the door, and I'm looking in there going, "Yeah, like I knew I didn't have any parts. There was nothing. I had my little motorcycle toolkit. It was like this big. That's all I had. So I come back in. I said, "Oh, you know what? We don't have it, but I'm going to go down to our warehouse. It's not far from here, and I'll get you the valve." And I said, "Oh, we've got every model but that one." And she goes, "Oh, okay, come back. Okay." So I drove off and I went to Home Depot. And I'm sitting in my van. I call up Steve because he had some experience by this stage. And I call him up and I said, "Hey, I got this valve thing at the top." He goes, "Yeah, dude, it's a fill valve." He goes, "Just go into Home Depot and get it." And he goes, "Have you got your plumbing shirt on?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, dude, put a sweater on or something. Put a sweater on." And I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Fuck, you don't want to look like a plumber. You don't know what you're doing."
You're going to need some help in there.
Yeah, need some help. So I actually I had this black sweater. It was freaking hot. I didn't even know I had it. So I put this sweater on and I go into Home Depot and I look around and I see this fill valve. I couldn't find the right one. So I asked the guy goes, "Oh, can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah." So, I mean, I just look like, a regular customer. So I said, "Can I help?" He goes, "Can I help you?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm looking for this valve." And he goes, "Oh, it's this one here." And then I started asking questions like how to install it and stuff, like what I should do. Anyway, so he's sort of telling me, and then I started asking a whole bunch of questions. He's like, "Listen, I think you really need a plumber." And I go, "Okay, thanks." So I go to Home Depot, I take my sweater off, throw it in the car. I drove back up to this lady's house and I go, "Oh, I've got the valve." And she's like, "Oh, great, thank you so much." All right, so I go and I install it. Everything was fine. And then the next job I go to, I walk in and they always seem to ask, "Oh, how long have you been a plumber?" And I go, "About an hour and a half." And they'd just crack up laughing, think I was actually telling the truth. So I ended up doing that for 4 years. I absolutely loved it. It was just every day was different. And, I had my product in the catalogs and I was still calling companies, on the side as well, trying to get trying to get some business and stuff. So yeah, that was the early days of it.
So do you do your own plumbing now, or do you call a professional?
I do mine.
That's good. So learn something along the way. Okay.
Yeah. No,
Good.
I actually trust myself sometimes, not all the time.
That's great. Um, so I think you also had a pretty creative approach to doing some of your you mentioned construction sites before. You mentioned construction sites before. You get a pretty creative approach to market research. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So one of my products, I've done this with the wedges, but I made a bigger wedge for leveling, which is this jumbo. And this is made of a really hard, high impact
Okay.
ABS material. It's super, super, super strong. So I wanted to do some market research with that. So my friend, like I said, was a contractor. So one day I asked him if I could come to work with him. So he's like, yeah, sure, you know, help me out. So what I did is I took about 3 or 4 of these with me to the job site, and they were doing framework. And so what I did is that at lunchtime, I was helping my friend, and I went and put about 4 of these out on the job site while the workers were at lunch. And I just put them random places. I just put them down. They didn't have the label on it, and I just carried on working. We didn't say, "Oh, here's a new product. Here's a new product. You should try it. You should use it. You could level stuff." We didn't say anything. I didn't say a thing. I just left them there. And after about an hour, I was just sort of watching these guys in the corner of my eye, and I wonder if I'll see it. Eventually they saw it, and one guy grabs it, and he didn't even ask where it came from. He just starts using it. And he's like had a hammer, he's kicking with his foot, trying to level stuff. He's like kicking with his foot. And after a while I was just watching, and they all ended up using it for different uses. So then after, I sort of told them it's a new product, and they're like, "Oh, we love it. Well, we just thought it was a tool that had been around forever." I'm like, "No, I actually invented it and built it." And they were shocked. They're like, "What? Really? You can't buy it anywhere?" I said, "No, I've only kind of just made it." And I said, "Oh, what do you think you'd sort of use it for?" So I got a pretty good idea of what they liked about the product, so I could target my uses for that. And then also got really valuable information on it. I said, "What would you pay for it? What do you think you would pay for it?" So they were like, I think it was like $12, $15 back then. They were quite happy. So they pretty much all, sit around that price point. So that gave me really valuable information on how I could go back and price the product to distributors. So that was just incredibly valuable. So if you have a product, don't show your friends, don't have your family comment on it, because you already know what they're going to say. If you can get it into the market that you think it is, the market it's for, and have people that don't know you, have no idea about the product, and see how they use it. And that's how you'll find, you could spend $100,000 on market research. It is absolutely a waste of money. Yeah. Take your product, I had a kid's product, and I actually took it to like a play center. It was like a kid's ball. And I asked the lady if they could, give it to the kids and play. And these kids played with it. And I saw what they did with it, and how much they liked it, So doing just stuff like it doesn't cost you anything. And it is absolutely invaluable information. There's no bias at all. And then you can see if you need to modify your product, if you like, this big jumbo wedge, was it too long? Was it too short? Was it high enough? And you want to find out all that information before you, go to market. So it costs nothing, and it's more valuable than what any company could really do for you.
Yeah, test frequently, fail quickly, right? Like tighten that feedback loop right up. And yeah, like you said, you're not really going to learn anything with the mom test, right? Throw it out in the real world with real potential, customers. Yeah, it's truth, right?
Yeah, this is so simple,
Yep.
such a simple thing to do.
It is, but these things get like overthought, right? And
Yep.
made a whole lot more complicated than they need to be. There's a grittier, scrappier, more startup friendly avenue
Yep.
to doing these things. So I think that's actually pretty good segue to the next thing, I want to ask you about. And that's just, you've been doing this for a long time. You had some failures, you've had a lot of successes. Um, you've probably learned some really interesting business lessons along the way. Do you want to talk about any of those?
Yeah, sure. I'm not short of them. Um, I would say, okay, so getting your product into, I mean, okay, my wedge sells really well in industrial, in an industrial account. So I was in McMaster-Carr, which is, in the top 5 or 10 industrial distributors. I'd been in there for a long time, and it sold really well. So I wanted to get into Granger, which is, even bigger than McMaster-Carr.
Sure.
And these can be just incredibly difficult. You can apply online. I don't even know if they read the like new product submission. Um, I mean, I spent a couple of years just trying to resubmit it, and you'd never hear back. And I think this was before. Well, no, it wasn't before LinkedIn. LinkedIn was around. I don't know if actually, no, I did use LinkedIn in the end. I had sales reps that said, "Oh, we're exclusive for Grangers. We're going to get your product in there and all this." So they talked to me for about 6 months. Never got it in there. They actually, said, "Oh, we can't get it in there." So anyway, I went on LinkedIn, that's right, and I found the. So I had nothing to lose. Like I'd spent a year or two, couple of years trying to get it into Grangers. Absolutely no feedback, nothing. So what I did was, I had nothing to lose, and I was a little bit cheeky. I connected with the CEO of Granger and Port Carruthers, and I sent him a LinkedIn message on a Sunday. So I thought Sunday would be a good day to do it because they're at home relaxing, and maybe they'll just get a chance to look at their phone. So I wrote him a message and I said, "Dear Court, your company sucks." I mean, I literally wrote this. I said, "I have a great USA made product. I'm a small guy, and you guys ignore me. You don't get back to me. How can you run a business like this? Your company really sucks." I literally wrote that because what can happen? What's the worst going to happen, right?
You're not going to be any further off than you were by being ignored. That's for sure.
No, absolutely. And I said, I mean, it was not a nice. I mean, I never really swore and wasn't crude. I just said your company sucks. I literally wrote that. So I'd seen it and I was sort of laughing to myself and I put my phone down. I was watching TV. I thought I'm never going to hear from that company again. About 10 minutes, not even 10, 5 minutes later, I get a message. I look at my phone and it's Court Carruthers. And he says to me, "Robert, I understand your concerns. Call this guy with the phone number. Monday, you're in." So I call the guy on Monday. He goes, "Yeah, I've heard from Court, and I've been selling to Grangers ever since,
Wow.
non-stop." So I don't recommend that strategy.
Not gonna work for everyone.
I don't think it'll get you very far. But I mean, it's just one of those fluke things. And I mean, I'm actually doing orders today for Granger. That was years ago. I mean, I'm trying to think. 2014, I think. It was a long time ago.
Well, you never know. You might have caught him at the right time. He
Yeah.
might have been reflecting on some of those issues that you were pointing out, and you might have sent that message at just the perfect time. Well, I mean, you did. Clearly, you did.
Yeah, like there is a little strategy when you're contacting people. I don't contact anyone on a Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Monday morning is when they just dump with emails.
Yep.
This long. Um, I usually try like a Friday night or over the weekend I'll send like LinkedIn messages. I find I get a better response. Like I say, there's so many variables, but to get those, you've got to constantly, contact these people. You have to keep getting to the top of their email. And say, if you're not the right person, can you recommend who is?
Yeah.
Instead of like saying, I have this product and they ignore it. But if you say, I have this product, are you the right person? Are you the right buyer for this category?
Yep.
And not always, but sometimes I go, oh no, call this guy, such and such. Here's his contact, and then you get hold of the right person. So,
yeah. It's just people on the other side of that, right?
Yep. But if you can do something to stand out too,
sure.
Don't be just write a really, write something with a bit of passion in it, something that gets that human connection. You just say, I'm with Southwestern Manufacturing, and I have this, say, hi, I'm Bob. I love your LinkedIn. I love your profile. You've done some amazing things. Start out with something like that. That gets that human connection.
More like you would do in person. Right? Yeah, I mean, you don't drop your resume on somebody before you get into a conversation over cocktails at a dinner reception, right? So yeah. So could you talk a little bit too, kind of in the the business domain, a little bit more about your distribution models? I thought this was pretty creative as well.
Yeah, sure. So I have one product, the Multi Wedge. How I got into the stores. So I'm in most of the big ones. I went to a trade show, one of the SEMA trade show. It's a specialty equipment manufacturers, I think it's association. I've been going to that for years. So it's kind of the largest automotive trade show, business to business. So I went there. Little side story. I wanted to visit distributors there. So I'm a manufacturer, and it's a manufacturer's show, so they don't like you taking products in. Like they call it suitcasing, where you go and try and sell to the vendors. You're not supposed to do that. Well, that's exactly what I wanted to do. So the first show I went to, I actually I wanted to take my wedges in with me. Well, I couldn't do that. So what I did is, before I went in, I actually put them in my socks, and I went and got my badge, and I walked through, and I had all these wedges in my socks. So what I did is I went up to the booth and got one of the bags. Someone will sponsor these bags that everyone puts all their brochures and stuff in. And I went and got that, and I went out. I went. I don't know whether I went. No, I went. I think I went to the restroom, and I took all my wedges out and literature they had, and I put it in the bag, and then I just walked back into the show. So I had my product, my flyers, everything with me. So that's how I first got into the show. So I ended up talking to one of the sales reps and said, hey, I want to get my product into all the stores. And I know it's really difficult. So the stores don't want one vendor, because, if you have 10,000 products and you have 10,000 vendors, then it's just a nightmare. So they like someone to have sort of pretty much all the tools, all the tires, batteries, etc. So the sales rep recommended that. He said, well, you could do a private label for another tool company that's already in there. And I thought, I never really thought about it. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. So he gave me a recommendation of a tool company. That was kind of a mid-sized company where you could actually get a hold of people. It wasn't one of the big tool companies. You never really seem to get anywhere. So
you didn't have to tell them they sucked on a Sunday afternoon.
No. So so I went and saw this company, and I said, hey, can I have this tool product? I know for a fact that this tool company was in O'Reilly's, AutoZone, all the majors. So I said, could I do a private label for you guys? And they said, yeah, for sure. And the guy gave me his card. And so what I did was I had my tool, my brand, and I put it in their packaging. So I started off doing that in 2011, I think, and I'm still doing that today. So that way you can add, so it looks good for them when they go to a buyer meeting. They go, oh, have you got any new products? Well, they show my product and it looks good for them, and their development cost is basically zero.
Yeah, right.
Didn't cost them anything. And it doesn't cost me anything either. So if you get the right partnership, it can work really well. So I would have, I did a couple of other private labels. So I'd have the same card, like this is it here.
Yeah.
This is still current today. So I'd have the same size card, my tools in here with this blister. And then if I got a new private label, the only thing I'd be changing is basically the artwork for that other tool company. So my costs, if I have a couple of private labels, my costs are exactly the same. It doesn't change. So the same packaging machine, the same blister, the same size card. The only thing different is the artwork.
Right.
So you have the only sort of downsides, you have to give them a really competitive cost. But then also on the upside is you have no warehousing, no sales reps, no employees. Excuse me. So it works really well. I've been doing that for 2011. Today, I'm still doing that today.
So are they doing the actual manufacturing and inventory storage as well then for those private labeled products?
All right. No, I do all of it.
You do that part though. Okay.
So I have a manufacturer in California.
Okay.
Actually, Compton, that does all the manufacturing. It's a really nice family. They have molded my wedges since 1999.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and they still do it today. I'm doing orders right now with them. And the kind of really cool story I really like is one of the ladies that started packaging my wedges when I first started. I've been doing it that long that her daughter grew up and she's now working and packaging my wedges with her mother.
Multi-generational family operation now.
Yeah, so I mean they're great. We've had a great relationship. I mean, some of my distributors, I don't have contracts at all. I don't have any agreements. The agreements are verbal. I don't recommend it. I'm just saying in my world, that's what I've done. We've talked about, the guy said, well, we're not going to rip you off. We'll buy from you. And, we're not going to knock your product off. And it was basically a handshake, 15 years ago, and it's still good. I mean, I give them really good pricing too, and I look after them. Like my molder, I pay him the same day. A few times he's called up, said, hey, can I borrow? One time he said, oh, can I borrow $20,000? I said, sure. I sent him $20,000. And you end up sending it back. He didn't need it. Just, when you get a dip in business, then you just need a little bit of. So that's the kind of relationship, we've had since 25 years. So his son has just taken over in the last couple of weeks.
That's great. I mean, you treat people well.
That's what I feel. I mean, you can have a 20, 30 page contract, and if someone's going to take advantage of you, they're going to do it with or without a contract.
Yep.
That's been my experience anyway.
Yep. Right. Yeah. Exactly. And then you get to fight it out in court. So yeah, work with people you can trust. Hire people you can trust. Partner with people you can trust.
Right. I get a gut feeling when I'm talking to somebody.
Absolutely.
I'm not always right, but 9 times out of 10 I'm right.
Yep.
But if you're dealing with a big corporation that that's not very friendly, like you're not on a day-to-day basis, then a contract's really valuable.
Yep.
But
they should really be called disagreements, right? Because
Right.
That's when they're used.
Yeah.
So one more, because we cater to inventors. It's so much of our audience here. What's the biggest piece of advice you'd give to those newer to inventing?
I would really focus on the market research of the product. To me, that's really core. Like actually finding out if it's a good product from the very beginning before you invest a lot of time and money in it. Like I said, my little story about putting my wedges on the job site. I
Yep.
think absolutely 100% focus on that, and that is going to give you invaluable information on the product design, the uses for it. So then you can cater your market from day one to that, to your core customer. What you're passionate about may not be what the customer is passionate about. So absolutely number one above everything, I would put doing proper market research. Like a classic example, when I thought of the Yamaha dealership, that was my passion. That's what I thought. And I was completely wrong. Completely wrong.
Yeah.
So, and also there's other, there could be other uses for your product that you have never thought of. So like having little focus groups is invaluable as well. So just the core of your product has to start out with really, really good market research. Absolutely critical. I mean, it can be a lot bigger than you thought, depending on the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, passion obviously is a huge part of that too. I can't remember if you said to me in person or I saw it in a video once, but you said that, one of the most, obviously everybody wants to make money in doing these things, but you said, one of the most important things is, inventing is doing it for nothing because there's a good chance your product won't work anyway, so you haven't lost anything. And I think that nobody goes into it not wanting to make anything, but there's something to be said about following your passions, building what you want, and soaking all of your own equity, your own sort of sweat equity into it, because you're probably going to end up with a better product, and then if it, like you said, if it doesn't work, you're not out as much.
Right.
Thought there was a lot of wisdom in that. And too, just like kind of in wrapping up a little bit. Not everyone out there is going to have to dodge bullets, or maybe benefit from crossing paths with one of the most uniquely qualified CMOs, your chief marketing officer, at just the right time. But I think that, so much of what you've done broadly applies, or, could apply to so many inventors, right? I mean, you personally discovered a problem and you used a skill set that you had developed to seek out a solution for that. You didn't over leverage yourself or give up control of your company to investors, right? Like instead, you found a minimally viable facility to work in, good old Bob's Machine Shop. You did a side hustle to keep yourself fed, with learning how to be a plumber on the job, and you applied your own sweat equity to the R&D. Your initial vision didn't meet what you thought was going to be product market fit, but you kept your eyes open, you looked for new opportunities, and you pivoted. And then you found really creative ways to gain market traction, and come up with a clever distribution system. And I just think, like, broadly speaking, for everyone out there, inventing is both the big and the small, and it's collectively all of these little inventions, from wedges to everything and beyond, that like make up the miracle that is modern life. And it's really about recognizing some need, tirelessly working towards a solution like you have, and then staying nimble, and open to sort of the new opportunities and paths that might just sort of present themselves along the way. And I just want to say personally, I love the journey you've taken, what you've learned along the way, the decisions you've made from that. And I really think it's like the great American, invention story in my opinion. So I hope others get a lot out of this. I did. So for what it's worth, like, congratulations on the successes, and again, for what's worth, like, fantastic work on doing it the right way. What we think is the right way. And just thank you for taking all of this time and sharing those experiences with me, with our audience. I think the folks are going to get a lot out of this.
Great. No, thanks for having me. And I really enjoy telling my story, and I absolutely love helping, inventors with their ideas. I get a lot of satisfaction out of it. I think it's really important, for the economy, for people to keep inventing and, finding solutions for even simple things, I really enjoy it. And, I'm as passionate today about my product as I was 25 years ago. I still 100% believe in it.
Yep. Yep. You can tell for anybody who's just listening to the podcast, you won't see it for those on YouTube. Robert's been, grinning ear to ear talking about this stuff the entire time. And, I think that really says something. Find something you enjoy doing. You're not going to work a day in your life. So, and every now and then you get to hop on a jet ski and, take it down to Bimini Island.
Yeah. No, got to have some fun too.
You do. You really do. All right. Well, thank you so much, Robert. I really appreciate it.
Okay. No, thanks, Josh. It's been super fun.
All right. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for listening. And remember to check us out at aurorapatents.com for more great podcasts, blogs, and videos covering all things patent strategy. And if you're an agent or attorney and would like to be part of the discussion or an inventor with a topic you'd like to hear discussed, email us at podcast@aurorapatents.com. Do remember that this podcast does not constitute legal advice, and until next time, keep calm and patent on.